So medieval Wales is evolving. A country with its own language and legal code is now also growing in cultural confidence. But what we still don't have is a united country. Split between warring kingdoms, it's not until the 13th century that a Wales under one leader becomes a reality. This is Pen y Bryn House in Abergwyngregin, North Wales. In the story of Wales, we learn that some experts believe it to be the site of the palace of the princes of Gwynedd. Llywelyn Fawr and his grandson Llywelyn the Last. Today, Pen y Bryn is a family home. But that's not to say the owners aren't keenly aware of the heritage that comes with their house.
When we first came in '88, people from the village started to come up one by one. They bought eggs and strawberries and presents for us, fish. And they said, by the way, you do know you're living in Llywelyn's house, don't you? And from that moment on, life changed. It wasn't just a family house we'd just bought. It was a piece of history, living history. And that took our breath away.
As a professional historical researcher, Catherine was well aware of the value of this kind of local, verbal history. She set out to find the evidence behind the stories that had been handed down the generations in Abergwyngregin for the past 700 years.
I went to the archives in Bangor and then moved on to Aberystwyth and the London Archives, the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. I went down the marches of Wales and knocked on doors of big houses where they might have an archive and just asked to be let in and sat down and chatted to them. And they produced letters and documents that still haven't found their way into archives. I went all over. It became a passion.
But there was one key to the puzzle that didn't quite fit. Although the house is called Pen y Bryn, local tradition has always identified the site as Garth Celyn. To prove her theory, Catherine needed to find a link between Llywelyn the Last and Garth Celyn. Finally, in 2006, she made a breakthrough. It came from the climactic correspondence between Edward I and Llywelyn himself at a time when the conflict between England and Wales was at its height.
In November 1282, Archbishop John Peckham had come here, negotiating between Edward and Llywelyn, and a series of letters passed back and to. So I went to Lambeth Palace Archives and looked at the letters, and there Llywelyn had written the name Garth Celyn. It was one of those incredible wow moments, and there was more than one, there were several letters, and it was that whole series, October, November 1282, and it was just incredible. Hard to explain. After all the years of searching, and there it was, Llywelyn's own letters.
And the content of the letters is no less powerful. Edward was offering Llywelyn a bribe. £1,000 a year and a large estate in England if he were to abandon Garth Celyn and leave Wales. But Llywelyn's reply was unequivocal. He said he would never abandon the people of Wales. It was a decision that would ultimately lead to his downfall. And it's that same notion of ancestry and inheritance that Catherine feels duty-bound to protect today.
This is my inheritance to pass on to my people and their future. And so you feel a responsibility. Yeah, and it's that duty. It's hard to explain in words, but Wales needs this.
Though the pieces are coming together, Llywelyn's old palace still has some secrets left to unearth.
We know there's a tunnel that goes from underneath the house to the sea. Several people have seen this tunnel. It's higher than a man's head, wider than him with his elbows stretched out.
Unfortunately, the tunnel was blocked in to stop the driveway collapsing.
This place is full of mysteries. We don't have a fraction of the answers, but the questions are really intriguing.